Okay.
Hi, assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Munira Izzuddin,
And this is Nuha Al-Shugairi.
and we're so excited today to talk about empowering our children in Ramadan. This kind of came from some questions we've been getting and conversations we've been having with parents, especially of young children, trying to figure out how can they best go about Ramadan and encourage their kids to want to fast, to love Ramadan. The reason we're calling it empowering our children in Ramadan is because empowerment is a positive discipline tool, and it's actually the opposite of enabling. Okay,
Right.
and
So we need to differentiate.
so let's differentiate. Like, what is the
between-
difference between empowerment versus enabling? Empowering is helping our children create kind of this sense of I can do it, I am capable, I on my own. Right? It's not connected to any extrinsic types of motivations. Enabling our kids is essentially doing too much for our kids. We try to facilitate so much for our kids to be able to be successful that we essentially create within them this feeling of dependency. Can I
and
do
doubt.
this? Yeah.
And also looking for others to kind of like validate
Right.
or to actually tell them what to do.
Right.
Right. And they lose the belief, okay, or the faith that they are capable, like you were saying earlier. And I also love what Jane Nelson and Lynn Lott say when they differentiate between the two. Like in enabling, parents come between life and the children. So basically it's like Munira saying in terms of like doing too much for them, or also protecting them too much. So then enabling is the end result of enabling is somebody who is fragile and weak, which we talk about a lot in the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So today we really are going to focus like on the basics of Ramadan and focus on what's within your power and your control. And so we're going to talk about fasting. We're going to talk about
Taraweeh.
touch about Taraweeh, because I know that's a concern for many parents. And maybe in general spirituality for parents.
Yeah. So let's begin with Sheikh Jamal Diwan, may Allah bless him, and his wife Sheikha Muslima. He was the first one to use this expression, and I like to use it after hearing it from him. And he basically says, when it comes to Islam, we really need to go back and focus on the basics, because we have been distracted in our practice of faith by so many minor and minute details, and we lost the essence of Islam and the actual important pieces of Islam. So let's come and ask the question, so what are the basics of Siyam or fasting? Just to remind you, I'm sure all of you, the first thing you memorize about Islam is the 5 pillars. So fasting is the 3rd pillar in Islam. So it is definitely an obligation on every Muslim who can fast and every Muslim who is actually after, beyond puberty. So let's keep this in mind. So going back to basics with our children in fasting, in Ramadan, the major obligation is actually the fasting, which is basically to abstain from, food and drinks between sunrise and sunset. So Munira and I are inviting you not to complicate Ramadan for our children by adding, layers that are actually not part of the obligation. So Taraweeh is a sunnah. It's a sunnah that is loved and revered, and we all love it because some of us actually get a spiritual high in Ramadan because we do Taraweeh. But it's ultimately a sunnah, it's not the obligation. Another thing that is also a sunnah is suhoor. So the Prophet ﷺ describes suhoor as barakah, like a blessing. Like if you actually do it, that means you're empowering yourself to fast the rest of the day. But when we come now back to the interaction with the parents and children, we see many phenomenon that is not reflective of the basic focus on fasting and is actually now extending to the other layers. And that's what Munira and I, we want to focus on. And also, how do you actually encourage your children to fast? So maybe let's begin with that piece.
So, okay, the question, and we posed it for the video, is should we encourage our 6-year-old to fast? Should we be telling our kindergartners, first graders, second graders, it's time to fast, like you can do this?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. And of course, there will be so many different opinions out there and so many different ways how parents are handling it. So Munira and I are basically kind of like sharing our own view on the situation. However, keep in mind from a religious aspect, the scholars, you know, actually start talking about encouraging children to participate in the acts of worship at the age of 7. So some parents in their zeal, okay, and their love for their children and for their for Islam, they you know start really talking like Munira saying about encouraging their children to fast before the age of 7. So I think our first invitation here is really don't have this conversation before the age of 7. However, let's assume you have a child who's actually younger than 7 and he or she comes to you and tells you, I would like to fast. Don't tell them no, because it came from them. But we're talking about your role, we're talking about your obligation. So our invitation is leave that conversation about the training for fasting until the age of 7.
Right. I mean, it's that's the beauty of Islam, right? That we understand that if there's no like force and there's no shaming and there's no you know making it like this is what you need to do, especially at a young age. And even when they are between like 7 and 10, right, where we begin to encourage fasting, it's still not obligatory on them, you know, and
unless it's a girl,
right,
and she had her menses early, which I know several girls who would start having their menses at 9. So no, then it's an obligation on her.
Right. Yeah. But the understanding puberty is also this like slow phase that comes upon as they're, you know, entering these later ages, and you know, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 even. So every child is different, and to respect that, you know, and to understand that encouragement or training of the fasting, it's more beautiful if it's coming from the child, right? And at the same time, you're role modeling for your child fasting in Ramadan.
Absolutely.
You are role modeling that, the importance of it. They don't need to be feeling the pressure to fast when they are at a young age.
Living it. I mean, if you personally are fasting, if your house has become a Ramadan-centered home, your children are feeling it because they see you fasting, they see you, you know, kind of like slow, okay, and kind of like really your energy is low-key. That's all part of the fasting process. So they see that, they feel it, they don't need the lecture about Ramadan to really start, you know, getting the training.
Right.
So maybe we can, so I want to highlight, so basically what we're saying, don't start the conversation about fasting before the age of 7. After 7, yes, start the conversation about the training, okay? Meaning, what does it mean to train? Meaning, like, we're going to take it in steps. And talk about how it's going to become obligatory on you once you reach puberty. So that needs to come from you. They need to hear this from you. Now, let's talk about what does training mean from 7 until they hit puberty. How does it look like?
It's just like we talked about this in the book, and we refer to kind of the Arabic term of like the steps of the minaret, right? It's slow steps. We're building upon the full fast. What that looks like for every family is going to be different. I'll share with you some, as we shared in the book, some things that worked for our children that we've seen in our communities that, you know, how kids approach fasting is fasting partial days. Right? Fasting the first half of the day or the second half of the day. And I personally like the second half of the day so that the child actually gets to break fast with the family and feel that they're a part of it. Maybe, you know, fasting only weekends. Maybe only fasting from food, but, you know, still drinking water. And we're talking about younger kids who really are trying to understand what it feels like to be hungry, right? And that's the fast, right? To have that experience of discomfort. So that's part of this early training as far as the fasting in particular.
And sometimes even some of your children may say that I want to fast only, you know, 1 day a week, for example, you know, and I want to fast the whole day, but I don't want to fast it. It's okay.
Right.
I mean, as long as we understand as parents what we're doing in this phase, again, it's between 7 and puberty, is we are training. So like Munira was saying earlier, please no shaming, please. And you know, I want to also highlight that some people think of shaming as, oh, you're a bad boy because you didn't fast or something like that. But there is another kind of shaming. It's a subtle kind of shaming. It's the kind of like, oh, do this so you can get all of these rewards, right? So, and we think we're doing a great job by encouraging them. But the underneath message is, oh my God, if I don't do this, I'm losing all of this. Maybe I'm not good. Maybe I'm not capable. So that leads to the other point, which other invitation is, please don't associate any act of worship with rewards and punishment. Please, okay? Focus on the training, which means like providing that space so that they can do it in your home with love and respect and compassion, but don't tie it to, if you fast the month of Ramadan, I'm going to give you, I don't know, $100. Or if you don't fast, you know, I'm going to deprive you of your phone. Or, right? Please, let's not do that, because the focus and the acts of worship really ultimately, and again, as Sheikh Jamal talks about going to the basic, what's the focus? The focus is connecting the child with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know many parents believe by doing rewards and punishment, they're helping in that process, but unfortunately, no. It's not helping in connecting directly with Allah. It helps more, and you connect with Allah more, you connect the child with Allah more when you keep talking about this is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what Allah said anyway in the hadith. He said, Asamu li wa ana ajzi bihi. Basically, fasting is for me, and I am the one who is going to reward it. So why deviate from the hadith? Say that hadith to your children, because you're then directing them to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly.
It's that focus on the intrinsic motivation and train the intrinsic motivation. Because you as a parent will only be there for a certain amount of time where they have to own the fasting on their own, right? And so as you're entering the teenage years with your kids, right? How are we empowering our teenagers? And I know, I'm raising teenagers right now. We're entering finals. We're entering the end of the school season. This is tough stuff they're about to enter, and they know it, right? And to be empowering and to be encouraging, it takes a lot, right? And part of, if we've built some of that intrinsic motivation, it's gonna start showing itself too, and they're gonna start realizing their capabilities. How can they handle it? How are they going to get through it? And we as parents ask those questions like, what do you need to be successful? How can we encourage you? One thing that we I just came across that I really it just moved me and it empowered me, and it's something that, as we're decorating the home for Ramadan, I came across this quote that I'm going to show it to you guys. It is, we can do hard things. And so I feel this statement right now is very salient for our family, because we're going through these hard things of finals, and we're going through these difficulties, but at the same time we're entering Ramadan where it's going to be hard. And in general, our life is going to have challenges. And the reality is that we can do hard things. As a family, this is the motto we're going to hold on to, is that we can do hard things and persevere and get through it and be resilient. And so
I loved how you actually stated it as a fact, because some parents they go like, oh no, it should be easy. Allah is gonna bless you. Allah is gonna give you. You just do it. But you're saying it is hard. Well, yes, true. Allah will bless you and put barakah in your energy and everything. But the idea that you started with without denying that it is going to be difficult is for those students who are going through finals and also fasting at the same time. I remember when I was in college in my 20s, Ramadan came during the finals of my freshman year. And so I remember, it was not a question, alhamdulillah, that's a blessing from Allah. It was never a question for me whether I'm going to fast or not because of finals. No, alhamdulillah, I fasted. But I was surprised that, and I'm not judging, okay, but all I'm trying to say is people are gonna deal with this issue differently. So let's assume you are a parent and your child is coming to you and telling you, I cannot fast and do the final test, and I'm really thinking of not fasting, right? So what are you gonna do? So that's gonna be tough for you, right? So I'm going to invite you to take it back again to the basic, which is, this is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can't be the judge of you, because Allah is the judge. He is the one who knows our limits, and He's the one who knows what we can handle. However, me as your parent, and as someone who loves to fast and believes in fasting, I really truly believe, even though it's difficult, that Allah will put barakah in your time and in your ability to, to pass the test or do the test. But then it's up to you. So tough questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is our goal really today, is to talk about these tough questions, talk about the realities that are in your homes. I know there's many of you have comments, questions. Go ahead and put them in the comments and questions. We'll try and get to them at the end of this session.
Right.
What we want to shift into is talking about Taraweeh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So as Noha said at the beginning, it is it's a sunnah. It's extra. Okay. And it's a beautiful extra, and it's a blessing that we come together in the community, especially within our communities and within our families in Ramadan. It's one of the beauties of Ramadan. And yet the struggle we hear many times from parents, especially with younger children, is, I really want to go to the mosque. I really want to go to Taraweeh. I really want my kids to love the mosque, and I want to take them to Taraweeh. And yet the reality is, Taraweeh can be a very oppressive, difficult, unfair, hard experience for a 5-year-old, for a 3-year-old, for a 1-year-old.
Right.
And I speak to this as a parent who struggles with, coming off my spiritual high of not having kids, right? And being able to say, oh, it's beautiful, I can get to the mosque every day and I can do my prayers. And then I had kids and I said, oh wow, how am I going to make this work? And my Ramadan feeling different. And accepting that my Ramadan is going to be different as a parent for a few years. And I say few years, maybe even 15 years or 20 years. But the stage of life, the phase of life that I'm in, I have to accept that being a parent is actually part of my worship. And so one of the decisions my husband and I made when our children were younger and, not at the age where we, can take them, we did 2 things. One, we used to take them to prayer, and we would do 2 rakas, maybe 4 of Taraweeh, maybe 4 if they could handle it. And we called it quits at that point. We would go home after that, or we would go out for ice cream, and the kids had the sense that they prayed Taraweeh. They knew they did something different and extra in Ramadan. And no, we didn't stay for all 20 rakas, but we did have the taste of it, and we left when they still could handle it and when they didn't have negativity or resentment starting to build in them. Right. The other thing that we've done is my husband and I would switch off, right? He would go to the mosque, pray the first 8 rakas, come home, be with the kids, and then I would go pray the other half. There are so many things that we need to think outside the box about and be flexible and understand it's a phase of your life, and you need to maybe do things differently to accommodate raising children. Just because you've always had Ramadan a certain way, it's not necessarily going to, and even that it's inhibiting your Ramadan in the way you've used to always do it, doesn't mean it's going to be forever. But it does mean at this phase of your life, you need to accommodate your kids and understand that Ramadan isn't just about you and about your spirituality.
Right. And if you really are keen on connecting the children with the masjid, and Taraweeh is really difficult, how about focusing on the basic? Again, we go back to the basic. What's the obligation? The obligation is to actually pray the 5 prayers, right? So we can connect the children with the masjid by going to the masjid and praying the 5 prayers in congregational prayer, if that's something you want to, or if that's too difficult, then do Isha. I mean, I think it's unfortunate, really. I think it's unfortunate that many people come to the masjid to pray Taraweeh and they miss the Isha, when Isha is actually the obligatory prayer, not Taraweeh. Just an idea to keep in mind. Let's go back to the basics. Anything else about Taraweeh? I personally did not take my children to the masjid for Taraweeh for different reasons. Masjid wasn't equipped to actually have kids while I'm praying, and I didn't feel it was I felt I would be burdening my children by asking them to pray Taraweeh. So I didn't ask that because I felt this is part of their faith journey. My part is focusing on the obligations and training for that, but then whether they want to pray Taraweeh or not, that's going to be up to them. So I never even mentioned one time in their whole life, go pray Taraweeh, or let's pray Taraweeh, even at the house. I didn't do it. And I know some of you are going to listen to me and they're going to go like, oh my God, Noha, you're just too permissive, or you're not asking too much of your children. And maybe I can see how you can see it this way, but again, I go back, their faith is their own journey. Okay, they have to go through their own journey. My part is just the training for the obligation. And then whether they want to do more or not, that's up to them. Okay, so
let's talk about suhoor.
suhoor. Okay,
Suhoor
please.
is, everyone has a different relationship with suhoor, and I think we create our own family cultures with suhoor. Those who actually get up and have a full meal, those who don't, who maybe have a midnight snack and don't get up for suhoor. However, each family handles it. It's up to them, and this is definitely a conversation that we should be having in family meetings, right? And talking about how we want to approach suhoor, what works for everyone. People are working, people have school, people aren't working. So suhoor becomes sometimes a battleground for families.
And that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you want to kind of share some of the things we see with suhoor, right?
Yes.
Where some parents insist on suhoor.
Exactly. Yeah, they insist on suhoor. So then they force the children to wake up, like the children in the morning, like oh mom, let me sleep, and they no, you have to wake up, otherwise. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about enabling the parents feeling worried that the children may not be able to withstand the fasting, so they want them to wake up and eat so they can, but that's you again coming between life and your children. Like, okay, so what's going to happen to them if they become very hungry that day? Okay, they're going to learn that actually maybe, yes, I need to actually eat something either before I sleep or, I wake up for suhoor and do it. The other piece that parents do is they prepare suhoor for their children. I'm not talking about very young children. I'm talking about children who are capable, right? Or teenagers or even young adults, right? So I'm inviting you, like Munira was saying, talk about it in the family meeting. Basically say, okay, suhoor is a sunnah, it's barakah. You get to decide whether you want to wake up early or not. You make the decision, and you have to wake yourself up. Or if I'm gonna wake you up, I'm just gonna come into your room one time, wake you up. I'm not gonna go, back and forth because I have to also eat my suhoor, right? Otherwise, I'm just gonna be spending the whole time waking you all up. So put the responsibility on the children,
right,
to really decide how they want to handle, their suhoor. That's part of empowering them.
Yeah.
What else about suhoor?
I think one thing we mentioned in the book was to not bring suhoor to your kid's bed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Please.
To insist on suhoor to the extent that you're bringing food to their bed.
Yeah.
Really is teaching them that you're in total control of the suhoor thing. They don't. They get it delivered to their bed. I mean, we would all love that, wouldn't we?
So again, the focus, remember what we're focusing on is actually to empower them to own responsibility for their life. So start early. I remember days when, when we all missed suhoor. Like me and my children, we slept through the alarm, right? So we wake up without suhoor. And so what are we doing? We just said, okay, khalas, we just have to manage, and we do. But it becomes an incentive for us the next day. Maybe, yes, I need to make sure I wake up for suhoor.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we need to say anything else. You want to talk about Khalamaha Hamawi?
Okay,
because she shared with us this beautiful concept.
Right. So a dear teacher and dear friend to me, Khalamaha, actually was on our radio show many years ago, and she shared something that really moved me at that time, especially having younger kids, where, and I kind of touched upon this before, talking about the spirituality of our Ramadan and how we seek it so much. And she said something that really I found so profound. She essentially said, the same thing, that this is a phase of your life, and don't worry, when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, inshallah, you're going to have as much time as you want, to do your prayers, to be on the rug, to pray, read Quran, to do all the spiritually fulfilling things that you're seeking. You will have time for that, but in this phase of your life, do the best that you can. And understand, give yourself a break. Understand that, between the caring for the children and trying to read Quran and trying to do your prayers, all of this is part of your worship. And I found this very just uplifting and encouraging for us, because we do forget that, especially when we have younger kids. We're so stuck in the grind of running after them, caring for them, and we feel like, oh, our Ramadan doesn't feel spiritual. And yeah, maybe it doesn't, and you're going to have to find that. I know when my kids were younger, because I didn't go to the Taraweeh prayer, I used to actually get up and go to the Fajr prayer. And that quiet moment and that 2 rakas in the morning was my connection to Ramadan, when I couldn't have it another way. So again, being creative and also being hopeful that in the future you will have more time to do all the worship that you want to be doing. And at this time, especially with your kids, as we say, focus on the basics. With yourself, even focus on the basics. Stay connected to the basics, and then all the extra things will come with time.
Yeah, I mean, also, I mean, if we're going back to the basics, like you taking care of your children is an obligation. That's a basic thing. That is, and if you are really thinking about it, that this is your jihad or this is your struggle in Ramadan, then that becomes part of the spiritual journey, your spiritual journey in Ramadan. I know it's not the same, like when you get that spiritual high, if you're doing qiyam, for example, and your imam is doing the dua and you're crying, you know, I'm aware of that. I've you know, Munira and I have gone through the years where we couldn't actually experience that in the masjid. But again, your being there for the children is, you know, a basic. And then also fathers. I mean, I know Munira and I are talking about mothers and children, but how about fathers?
Right.
Who have to wake up early in the morning and go to work, and they have a long day. And then, you know, they come back and they barely have time before iftar, and then, you know, they have iftar. So this is an invitation to both mothers and fathers. Okay. Don't feel guilty if you are not doing anything beyond just the fasting and the 5 prayers, okay? Because that is actually the obligation. Anything else is actually an extra layer for people who have time for it. So, inshallah khair.
Inshallah, that also empowers you as parents. And I think when we are feeling empowered as parents, we can also pass that down to our kids.
Right. There was one comment that I can't find it again. I just read it briefly, and it was, I think, from Ragad Abed. I don't know where it disappeared, but anyway, I caught it, and she's asking, why are we saying no rewards and punishments? And because this is a very a big discussion, so we're not going to go into it, but it's such an important discussion, and we discuss it in the book.
It's in the book. There's a whole section about
not doing part 2 when we talk about punishment. I think it's part 2 before the tools.
Chapter 4. So it's in chapter 4, no carrots and sticks, and we really break down why positive discipline is not that kind of philosophy. It's not about focusing on the punishments and rewards, which is extrinsic motivation, and positive discipline really is about intrinsic motivation. And part of empowerment and all of these other tools we talk about is the way you can intrinsically motivate your kids.
And in my parenting classes, and I actually talk about the difference between rewards and punishments as we do them as human beings, and the rewards of punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if anyone is interested, you'll have to stream the parenting class on gumroad.com.
Okay.
But
any other questions from our listeners? Thank you all for joining us today. Inshallah, you are finding this conversation beneficial. And our goal is, inshallah, to try and bring some of these book discussions with you. Whenever, once a month, or when things come up. I know we have a comment. Someone said, why don't you open a closed Facebook group for those who read your book so they can reflect on their experience and share opinions? Let us know. Is that something you'd like? We're hoping that these public conversations are a space for us to have these discussions. Because whatever we are struggling with, know that you're not the only parent struggling with it, right? A lot of what we go through is a joint kind of experience. So I hope, inshallah, that, you find empowerment through kind of this conversation, and that you're not alone. No. Especially those of you with the small children. Bayan said, you made me cry with my 2 years old Ramadan. It's very difficult. It is very difficult, and
we've been there. We know your pain.
But also know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
You are going to have beautiful Ramadans ahead of you, and they're going to be different. And I think part of parenting small children is accepting that our spirituality, our practice is shifting with our kids.
Yeah. And
to be okay with that and to accept that.
Yeah. Subhanallah. And parenting changes you spiritually, by the way, in different ways, subhanallah. So Khair inshallah. We wish you a blessed Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept everything that you put forth in this month, inshallah, whether it's a good word, because remember, I mean, our good deeds are not only prayers and fasting and sadaqah. It's actually also, you know, a good word, a smile to someone, helping someone, or calling someone who's really feeling down, or just being. Yeah. So have a blessed Ramadan, inshallah, and hopefully we'll see you after Ramadan.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum
Assalamu alaikum.
and jazakumullah khair.